How big is yours? I wonder if mine's bigger. Families, that is. I come from a family of 8. You can only imagine the level of organisation that comes with that. I have such vivid memories on a Sunday morning, rushing to get ready to church on time. I had this huge sense of responsibility that if we didn't get to church early enough, there was no way we could sit together as a family, because we'd take up a whole pew. The thing though, there was no pecking order about where we would sit. It was all about sitting together as a family. And it's interesting how that metaphor of a church pew has remained such a symbol when I think about the challenges and the lived experiences I've faced and thought about taking a chance on this idea of leadership. Not quite the memory of what you didn't see was disobedience, or there's no way we would speak out of turn on a Sunday morning at church. But if I think about the times we'd sit around a dining room table playing a game of Monopoly, we can all probably think about that game of Monopoly that didn't end so well. There wasn't quite hair pulling or tabletop turning, but there certainly was that tension in the room, mostly driven by a bit of competitiveness. But I think what I didn't understand was those games of Monopoly were actually teaching me some innate values around what it meant to be a leader. I was the yes girl at school. Yes to a job, yes to an opportunity, yes to the opportunity for more points on the whiteboard or more stickers on the chart. And as I think about my formative years, the more I reflect is how those opportunities to do something or take on additional sense of responsibility was often attuned to a title or a badge. Head girl, team leader, Queen's Guide, club captain, team captain. And what I didn't realise at the time is that while that might have made sense in my formative years, did it really set me up to understand the true sense of leadership and actually what it was telling me about the power of a badge or the power of a title? Leadership. It has such a sense of appeal to the ego, but actually it's quite the threat to the ego. It's that idea that we take selfless action for other people. You see, leadership isn't about a fancy title or a badge. It's about the way we lift up people around us, the way we achieve things, and the way we make a difference to other people. Servant leadership, that walk from arrogance to humility, that idea that we care so much about those around us that we're prepared to let go of power and to look at those around us who have less power than us, and we seek their ideas, their lived experiences, in order for us to achieve a better outcome than what we would have been able to do it by ourselves. You see, leadership doesn't come with a fancy title, doesn't come with a badge. It's not about our social status, the size of our bank account, or is it? You see, as a society, we've created such this affinity to the idea of a badge or a title. And all of a sudden, when someone has a badge or a title, does that really mean that we should believe them more than we believe the person who doesn't? And just like I've told you about my formative years where I can think about times where the badge or the title mattered, I can think about just as many other experiences where the title or the badge didn't matter. I reflect on the sultana cakes by a dozen that my mother would make for school galas, or the school working bees, or the times where as kids we were taught not to walk past that piece of rubbish, where we were encouraged to stand up for the shy and fragile child in the in the schoolyard. We were taught to do the right thing. And that didn't come with a title or a badge. But what it came was with this huge sense of responsibility that we could see every day in our communities, people making a difference. Now, when we think about local government, which is where I work, it's really easy for us to get caught up in this trap of local government being about roads, rates, rubbish, red tape. We're providers of infrastructure and services. But when I arrived in local government nearly 10 years ago, what I quickly understood is that local government's about so much more than that. It's about stewards and placemaking and community building. It's about connecting people together to make a difference. In local government, every day we see leadership, and it's not with a badge or a title. It's community coming together to make action because they want to make a difference despite their social status, despite their bank account, despite their title or badge. At the age of 29, I became the Chief Executive of Central Hawke's Bay District Council. I was the youngest Chief Executive to ever be appointed in local government. But when I'd arrived in local government some 10 years earlier, it's fair to say I'd walked into a sector where the tenure in the organisation, the letters against your name, your age, did define whether you were a leader. I didn't plan to work in local government, I fell into it. But I fell quickly in love with local government because I soon realised that I had an enormous opportunity to shape communities from the inside out. I could shape the concept of what leadership meant in our organisations that play such a critical role in our communities. Interesting though, when that appointment was made, many people, but mostly the media, focused on my age. Was it that I didn't have the years of experience and therefore was I suddenly unfit to deliver what this organisation needed? I want to tell you a story about Debbie. This is a picture of our end-of-year Christmas celebration in my old organisation and our end-of-year staff awards. And I love this picture. It's one of my most favourite memories of my career. Debbie was employed through a supported employment program, first in a vegetation management role, but then she became our cleaner. And here we're celebrating Debbie for being the recipient of the Spirit of Council Award. Debbie was a mover and a shaker. Her laugh, you could hear it from one end of the office to the other. She went above and beyond on all the small things, from the pictures that she put in the toilet to the conversations that she would have in the workplace. Debbie delivered on our vision and mission every day. The values of trust, respect, innovation, valuing people and excellence were so evident in everything Debbie did. But yet on an organisation chart, Debbie wasn't a leader because she was the cleaner. But what I can tell you is that Debbie was one of the most influential people in our organisation. She would arrive before everyone else, and so ultimately she could set the tone for the day. I'm motivated to lead organisations where we empower everyone, no matter the level they are in the organisation, to make a difference. You see, councils, we're not some faceless organisation with a capital C. The council. Councils are made up of real people. Real people who not just care about community and serve community, but in fact, they are community. On the 2nd of May, I started as the Chief Executive of Horowhenua District Council, and some 18 days later, we were faced with a pretty devastating tornado. And the following day, the community came together to help each other out. And what you can't see in this image is the lineup of machinery and trucks of all the contractors that were volunteering their time. There's no titles or badges in this image. Sure, there's a few high-vis vests. But one of the most powerful things in this photo is that my staff turned up. No one told them they had to be there. No one asked them to be there. But they turned up because they care. You see, council isn't some faceless organisation trying to make life difficult for us all. Council's just made up of real people who aren't just serving community, they are community. But in the chaos of life, things can get confusing. And with such a broad sense of responsibility and purpose, our why can often get lost. We have so many competing demands between the complaints, the tasks, the processes, and you sprinkle a bit of politics in all of that. And often it means we disconnect from a community. But what my experience tells me is that if we can build organisations where an organisation is a community just as much as the community in which we serve, then we create an opportunity to focus the why, focus our link and our purpose to our people. What my experience tells me is that if we can design organisations where the care that we want the people who serve the community is the same care that we show the people who deliver to that, and we design organisations where our policies and our strategies, but our actions and our words, and even the way we develop budgets and plans reflects that organisations are actually communities. They're made up of people who want to make a difference, but that means we need to remove the layers and allow them to all be a leader. Today I've talked about this concept of leading leaders, this idea that we can shift our thinking from hierarchical organisations where only if you have a badge or title are you empowered to make a difference, to the idea that we can all make a difference. We're all leaders, and we're all, every day, making a choice about whether we're leading leaders in our communities. I want you to think about your homes, your workplaces, your community. How do you see leadership? How is it rewarded? How is it reflected? How is it celebrated? Because what I know is that if we remove the layers and look at people as people, then we start to see that the title nor the badge matters, but it's about the difference that they make. And so just like that game of Monopoly, it doesn't matter what the pecking order is. The power is in your hand.